Hi everyone, welcome back to the Jansen Art Studio. I'm David Jansen, and today I'm going to show you a little bit of what we call optical techniques. These are what are described as 19th century divisionist techniques. These are some of the techniques invented by Monet and other impressionistic style artists. And what I'm going to do is they utilize a concept what's called optical blending. And here you can see, of course, you're looking at this camera here. It's step back. You look at these little daisies that I've painted here, and they appear pretty soft. But if you go up here and we look up at the close-up of it, you can see there's quite a few stroke textures and stuff like that. But when I switch back over to the other cameras there, you see they appear kind of soft. That's called optical blending. And so you get up real close and you see it, and you see a lot of stroke detail to it. You get back and your eye starts to soften or blend those particular colors together. So artists use different types of techniques. As a matter of fact, I just finished a book which is coming out with called Garden of Flowers Volume 3, which utilizes over 12 different types of optical techniques. And I'm going to show you a couple of them today. But this one is a cooler painting. Here, let me turn it sideways here. Here you see a painting again, looking up back at it. The flowers appear pretty soft, pretty nice. And then up close, and you see a heck of a lot more stroke details to them and color uses. And you see the unblended color passages, strokes, or what we call marks, color marks that are left on the particular flower. And as you step back, those color marks, of course, your eye starts to optically blend those. So getting the right tone, the placement, the value of that color is really important to this type of painting. But you'll see here's some roses and some other things that I have painted optically here. Again, stepping back from it, looking back on this particular camera, stepping back from them, they look really nice, and they're somewhat soft and everything. But then you come up close and you see a lot of the optical techniques to it, the stroke techniques, the color usage and stuff. So these types of paintings are made really for the artist to paint with the idea that they're going to step back. Now, many people paint with a viewing distance of 3 to 6 feet. I like around 6 feet. Some go as high as 15 feet, 15 to 20 feet. And of course, one of my, favorite painters, John Singer Sargent, he did it 15 to 20 feet. You go down and look at some of his paintings down the National Museum or National Gallery down in Washington, and you get 20, 25 feet away from them with those before they really start to soften out. There's some beautiful ones by him. But anyway, what I have here is a board. This is just a regular MDF board. And on this board, I've just put down a light gray and some other colors. Matter of fact, I started a painting and then I ended up just backing it back out, so I have some colors on there. But that doesn't really make too much of a difference. I'm going to be using here, over to my palette, I'm going to be using the Heritage Multimedia paints, which are, all the links to this are in the video below. But I put them out into the little containers like this, and I add some extender. You don't always have to paint with them like that. They come into a tube like this. As a matter of fact, this is the quinacridone violet. I'm going to use a little bit of that today, so I'm just going to put out a little bit of the acrylic. This is into the acrylic. In these containers here, I've mixed in a little bit of the extender medium, and I'll grab that here. This is just a regular Global Arts extender medium. This is formulated for this particular paint, so don't go buy this and think you can go use it with other acrylics. This is made for these two to work together. This slows down the drying time. As a matter of fact, you can add some of this to the paint like I do here in this particular container, and slow the drying down to several hours to a couple of days. Some of the colors you can really stay wet for a couple of days. Now I'm going to be using the fusion brushes. These are the long handle fusion brushes. Again, all the links are down below, right down below, and please check those out. You can get all these products on Amazon. You can get them over on our particular website, our particular online store. Okay, all right. So I'm going to use the long handle brushes because I want to be able to step back and get a little bit of optical distance to my painting here as I go to paint. First off, let's come in. Let's take some white, and I'll take some extender down into this white also. And let's go in and let's add some background colors. Now I love I love to make here's a little phthalo blue, a little Hansa yellow, a little black. I love the phthalo, the Hansa yellow, and the black. I like to control those together to get all different kinds of colors here. Of course, lightening it up with the white. This will give me kind of a nice yellow-green here. Sometimes I'll add other colors to this to help particularly tone this down. Like I do like, this is brown matter. This is a brown matter color to it, and it makes this, because it's a kind of a very toned red, it will gray this down almost to a, I don't know, lighter brown or so. Gives you a kind of a warm kind of background here, warm to a neutral. I'm going to take some of this, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to paint some of this right up into my background here. I love these to do different types of backgrounds here. And I love to play the different backgrounds. So, like up in the top corner, like here, so if I'm going to imagine light coming down this way, I might put some warm tones in like this. As it comes further down here, I might take let's take a little bit more black here. And let's even add a little bit of our quinacridone here. Let's cool this off, and maybe a bit of my Hansa and some more black here. Get kind of a cooler gray color here. And of course, there's tons of colors you can make, but that little bit of quinacridone here will make this color appear a little bit cooler here. So you can see that's just a little bit cooler color there. Got just a bit of glare on that, so we'll have to take care of that. But so I'm going to just put some of this cooler color in here, push this back. This will be a real nice kind of like a shadowy area, on this particular painting. Sometimes I'll take and I'll just push some color into this as well. So here's some nice cool quinacridone. I love to paint and play. Like up in here, I put some orange, some nice warm color there. But I love to play backgrounds and background colors. And to me, sometimes it's you get these beautiful backgrounds. They're almost a painting all by itself. But so I'll gray this out. Sometimes I'll add some blue up into the upper corners there. I might change this out and add, let's go just a little bit more yellow. Let's add a touch more white right up here. Get a warmer, a little bit more of a yellowy white right up here. We'll change the light direction. I love to bring the light in from the upper left, but today we'll bring it in from kind of from this direction a little bit. And just run these together. I love to run these together. Now don't get too big long strokes because that creates a long line of movement through here. So step back on the handle of your brush like this and just kind of short stroke these colors together like this and just work them together. The Heritage are very heavy pigmented colors, and so they will they hold their identity for a long time, just like a high quality oil paint does. These have the same ground pigments that oils do, so that you can do all the different kinds of oil techniques. They're not a cheap acrylic. They're, a craft acrylic. These are an artist quality painter's acrylic, so you can do all kinds of different looks. So here I got a nice beautiful background to work with that. Now I'm going to take and utilize a smaller Fusion. This is a Fusion number 8 flat here, long handle. And I love the color burnt sienna. I love to draw or sketch with a burnt sienna color. So I'll go ahead and use that here with this. And we'll paint in a couple of roses here. So my light's coming this way. Let's turn a rose here, kind of this direction right here like this. And the rose is, of course I do all different kinds and stuff, but a rose is a circle, or if you want to turn it slightly, a little bit more of an oval shape. So we'll put one in here, kind of an oval. I set the center in here. I'll set a center in like this, just wiggle that in. That sets the gaze of the rose, which way the rose is going to go. And those of you that follow some of my rose paintings, I always like to put in that bottom or the shadow area of the bowl that's on there. So that helps me see the gaze and stuff of the rose. Now, sometimes if I feel I get too much paint or something like that onto the surface, rather than, lighting up or something like that, I'll wipe back just a little bit of my color back, just a touch like this. That helps me remove just a little bit of the extra paint, and I can see that rose. I can see the shadowing part of that rose, and everything's going to work out fine on this. So let's put in a couple of flowers like this, or more open wild type roses or something. Let's drop one in at an angle like this, and you know, I could put one up through there like this, but I like them to come in some different angles. Let's put in more like a bud of one right into here. You know, and a good floral painter will decide. Let's put one in right over here, another bud of one over here. But you know, the botanical painters, they became very popular, especially into the middle part of the 19th century, in that they would paint flowers and stuff into the different stages. So in a floral composition, they would paint flowers in different stages, like they might have the bud, a juvenile flower, and then a fully adult flower. But here we're going to have some different types of flowers as well. But in botanicals, that's what you do. So I usually like to include some different types of botanical type of look to a floral when I do that. Now, let's come in. One of the things I love to do, I'm just going to take a little pine green here and just make kind of a brownish green. I could use my black and yellow as well. There's a bunch of different ways to do this, and as a matter of fact, in the book I show all different kinds of ways to make tone greens, brownish greens that really vary the look, especially when you're going to change from warm backgrounds or cool backgrounds. But here, putting in a little bit of my Hansa and a little bit of the black into this, and this touch of this brown matter, which is such a beautiful color to paint with. We'll put some of that in, and I'll use this. I'll step back on my brush like this, and I'll use this, and I'll set the main line here of the painting here. So I'm going to set some in, and let's just drop one in here. So sometimes I like to to paint in all different kinds of directions, and I'm going to loosen up this design in here a little bit, get some of these more toned brownish greens into there. And this is just such a fun way to paint, especially with the long handle brushes. If you haven't used the long handle brushes like this, they're really quite magical because they allow you to really relax the edge of the painting, which is what we want to do in an optical technique. And I've been using these. These are newer brushes this year into our line, and we've had the Fusion flats for a long time, which you see in many of my videos. I love to use those. And now we've made the long handle ones because we have a lot of people who are easel painters, and I am one too. Of course, I'm painting on an easel here today. But easel painters like to step back a little bit, and this is what they do, is you step back and you get a really wonderful casual look to your paintings here. And of course, when I'm painting with landscapes, I hold my brush different as well. I'll do a lot of painting like this and I push the colors like this, which gives me a very casual look to the colors. I don't always stroke or anything. I make what we call marks into the painting here. And so here I'm just going to push some colors in there, okay? And I might even take on a beautiful optical painting like this, I like to make part of the element or the rose here. Let's put this one back up here. I like to make part of the element or the rose. I want to like to bring in like half of it, and half of it I like to disappear. So I may take some of this green and stuff right here and just walk this right into this rose on this lower section. That's going to cause that rose to disappear a little bit. Now this is also where you step back. This is also where you start to step back, and of course, you look at it from now. We look at it on this particular camera, and it is stepped back. That camera is about 7-8 feet away from me on a normal zoom, so you're seeing what it's going to look like optically at 6-7 or so feet, and you see this softness that's coming into the painting here. If you're painting on an easel, you step back. This is the beautiful thing about a painting like this is, we do these optical paintings so that when we go hanging on the wall in the living room and we step back 5-6 feet, or it's on the other side of a couch or something like that, you're automatically pushed back from it. It still has the interest. It still has a life. It looks beautiful. But if we go in and we paint it up real close and then we hang it on a wall and step 5-6 feet back, the eye optically blends everything and it loses some of its interest. So these paintings are made to really go into living rooms and stuff and be viewed from several feet away. But that's what I want to do here is collapse this edge. Maybe this edge of this one will collapse this lower edge of this one here. This is an artist's choice, and of course in the book and stuff that I do, the book and the associated DVD, I show you a ton of different ways in which to work some of these optical techniques like that. And you know, how I get different types of looks and everything, and you know, the beautiful coloring and stuff like this one, the beautiful coloring that comes in, you know, to the painting. And you know, it takes a lot of power just to go in there and just splash some color on and let that happen, and step back and see what really happens. And there's this one French painter I love, Eugene Pennant. He was the teacher of one of my most favorite painters, Coussois, and he was very much an optical painter. He was a personal friend of Monet, and really optical painting. You look at some of his stuff up close and you go, wow, that's not a flower, and you step back and you go, wow, that's a beautiful flower. So being able to paint like that is really something. Now I'm going to take a little brown matter and a little bit of my green and stuff here, and let's just add some more of that right into the little pine green brown matter, and let's make some marks here. Let's try to keep away from strokes and make some color marks and some movement here. Let's redefine my shadow right down here, the bull shadow of that particular rose, and see how I move my brush kind of quickly, and sometimes I'll use the corner of the brush like this and just move it through like this. A lot of, you know, there's a lot of other techniques. There's a half-tone technique that I use where I come in very specifically and make marks of the colors, and there's others where I will move real quick like that, and sometimes take my paper towel and back an edge back out like this so that I can express that light one more time in there. It's a different way in which to look at it. Now, I'll look to see just how much more contrast I want to have. So maybe I'll take some really cool red violet. Red violet's very, very cool on this particular palette. We'll take some red violet, and let's add just a touch. I don't want it to get real bright red here, so I'll add a touch of pine green to that, which will brown the color up. Just a touch of my green into that, which will help brown that up. And let's come in here and make, and you can see it's quite a bit darker. Let's make a few kind of real loose marks to loosen up that center and get that shadow in there. Let's make a couple of marks down here at the bottom of the bowl and move those out. And see, I can use the corner of my brush here just to kind of, I call ease the edge of the painting here, ease the edge of the mark here, there, like that, to take some of it out without taking all of it out there. I'm going to reshift some of this dark center right back up here, and I'm going to ease the edge of that mark there like that. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's do this rose up more of a kind of a peach color here, and so I'll take down some of my burnt sienna here, and let's take some yellow oxide here. That makes beautiful peach colors. The yellow oxide, you know, some brown matter are beautiful peach colors. A really lovely cooler peach color is your yellow oxide and your quinacridone violet. This is one of my favorite ones whenever I want to do a peach color onto a rose. And of course we add that white in there, and then you'll start to get that real beautiful peach color. Of course, this will be a cooler version. This will be a warmer version up here. This will be a little bit warmer color. This will be a little bit cooler color up here. Let's start slightly warmer. Let's go up here and let's put some of this in, and right about in here like this. You know, with some of the real casual techniques that you see me paint in the other videos here on YouTube, you see where I don't overmix the colors. When I'm doing optical techniques, I mix the color down a little bit more so that I get a tone that I can strike, and then I go through to adjust that tone. So coming back up through here, I may strike this tone here like that, put that nice heavy tone on there. There's a nice warm, it's advancing quite nice. You know, this is where I'd step back from the, you know, from the painting again and go and look at that, and I can see it up on a monitor over there. You can see actually the contrast that you're going to have by stepping away from it. And I'll come back in and decide, do I want to ease this edge? I can ease the edge with my brush. I can come back and tap in just a little bit more like a brown matter to this and ease that with a little bit of brown matter as well here. So I'll touch a little more brown matter. Now the brown matter is a little cooler, but it's still slightly warmer, and it will, so it's a good color to kind of ease that out. Now, looking at it up close here like this, it looks pretty blended out because I've eased those colors out pretty good. And when I go step way back, that's really kind of blended a little more than what I like in these particular types of techniques. So what I'll do is I'm going to come in here and we'll lighten this up and get a little more mark or a little bit more contrast here to these particular marks. So I'll come in here a little bit lighter. Let's set that particular mark in there. And I'm going to kind of follow along the edge of the rose here like this, kind of put some of those marks in. Now, this is all wet in here, and I've got this light color in here. I can tone it down slightly. There's a couple ways to approach it. As a matter of fact, in the book, I show you all different kinds of ways, but I'll kind of take this down to what we call a half tone. I'll tone it down about halfway down to the shadow tone that I see over here with this one here. And those particular marks will ease in color-wise. You'll see that start to come in, and I'll use the corner of this little flat here and ease that color down into this, towards this shadow right down in there like now. And so I have the front advancing, I have the back going back here. I can come in and restate a little bit of this red violet in here with just a bit of this tone in here just to get a little more movement here of the red violets. I look at that nice cool color. Let's state some of that right over here for right now. How much you're going to ease off these edges here. Now I'm going to head to the shadow side, so I want this to start to collapse down. So this is where maybe I'll come back over here to my palette, drop it down in as far as a tone. Don't use the same type of stroke, but we'll let that just ease out like that. And let's come in here and build this tone here, pulling down. I'm either, I don't always stroke in this or make the mark in the same direction. Sometimes I'll pull in or pull out. I like to vary the marks because I want to have interest here to the flower. So I'm looking at, you're building this round bowl here. I'm looking at using my brush. Now, I maybe want to bring this edge up here too. So I'll plan my mark so that I bring this rose edge up like this, and that gives that just a little bit more power right there to that. Now, I'm probably going to want to have a little bit more and a little bit lighter. I'm going to go into a little Hansa yellow and a little white here. I'll make a lighter mark color here, and I'll come in and I'll hit the edge of this light here with a couple of marks. Now, this is again where you step back and you see, do I need to ease that edge, or do I need to do a half tone in there to soften it down? This becomes a matter of contrast for you as the artist, as how you're going to do it. But I tend to follow, the good rule of art is what we call disproportionate color. As a color gets lighter or a color gets more intense, the area in which you occupy gets smaller. So as I get these light colors, I'll small it down. I'll use just the corners of my brush there to ease that into that shadow there just a bit. Let's come in and make a couple of lighter petal marks. Now that I've lightened up that front, I can just come right over here, and not to my front light, but we'll come back over here. Look at the color difference that you have. Drop it down just a bit here and make a couple of kind of almost turned little marks. I don't like to, when I'm painting these types of techniques, I don't like to curve my brush because that is more of a decorative painting type look. I like to keep the marks pretty much straight, but I'll do them at different angles and stuff here so that they'll get different looks to them. Now, I'm going to go back out here towards my light. Let's come back out here and let's come back out farther here and set out the reaching petals, stroking back into the bowl, put out some marks here for those petals coming back in. Okay, and that's my real light area. This is some of the light area of my painting here. Maybe to this top one, I'll stick to that current light that's right there. And then I might drop down here towards my cool here, a little bit darker here as I come this way. And sometimes I'll pull out here and I'll make just a few little suggestive marks here, letting this edge of the rose kind of collapse down towards its shadow area down in there. And then I'll come back and work the marks. Now, I don't like a huge shadow like this on a rose, especially because that is a little bit bothersome or a little bit too perfect. So I'll take some of that shadowing line out, and now it's how much contrast do you want to build? I'll come back in and put another lighter mark here onto the rose, maybe down towards the base there. I'll let it kind of lighten up there towards the edge there. I'll build up a little more contrast. Now, I hardly ever paint a rose here to completion before I move on to the other flowers, but I do, since this is the queen here of this particular painting. I will lighten her up here, get her pretty close to where I want to have in here, and then I'll move out to some of my other flowers and then return to work on her a little bit more. So we'll put up a little bit more light color. Sometimes I will wipe my brush. Now, I always paint with a paper towel in my hand like this, and wipe that brush every once in a while, take some of that off, because I can come back in here and I know underneath this light color is I have that shadow, and I can remove. These are removing types of techniques, and I talk about all about these in the book and stuff. So, but I'll step out and I'll remove some of these edges out here like this, and soften up some of my my color. And I also add, see, this is this beautiful working of color that you get here just by wiping the brush, using the soft fusion brush like this, and lifting out and letting some of these marks here like this, little quick little marks here, some stay, some go like this, and it becomes a real suggestive type of rose, which I really love to paint. Now, and of course, you can do all different kinds of ways here. Let's come in and let's go up and let's just push a little color right up in here. Let's do this as a rosebud. So we'll push a little bit light color into that right there, like that. I paint these relatively quick. I'll take a little cool color. Here's a little quinacridone, a little bit of my brown madder, maybe even a little bit of red violet here. Let's come in and let's just kind of set where that center. Now, if it's a rosebud itself, I like to oval it up. This will be kind of the light side. This will be the shadow side, and I want to get towards that peachy color, so I'll just push a few little marks of color, and these heritage acrylics just work that so very well. Let's lighten, let's warm, let's get it back to our yellows, a little yellow oxide. You could use Hansa, you could use yellow oxide. What's the difference? Yellow oxide's warmer, but the Hansa's brighter. So this is brighter, this is warmer. And it's all up to you of what you want to do. I'm just going to push this color in a little bit, maybe give a little bit of the mark to that, a little bit of color mark to that. Push this out like this. Let's get like a little growing petal out here like that. We'll soften that edge. We'll just quick little taps like that. That's all you need. I'll wipe my brush like this, and let's just lift out some of that right there, and that'll leave me my shadow here coming out to that side right where that bowl is. And I kind of like that. You can push onto your palette like this, pick up a little edge like that gives you a nice edge to your brush, and you can come in here and mark another petal if you want, or a little edge of a petal right there. Wipe your brush so you have that, so you can soften that off just a touch there. I like that. That gives you a nice little soft little rosebud, and of course you can do all different kinds of things. You can add, or you can push up and pick up a little bit of extra, like maybe if you want to get really defined, you can make a mark down like that and define the edge of that petal. Now, you have this, it's kind of a heavy mark there, but if you step back, that will soften out. Or you can wipe your brush and just leave just a little bit of that mark there like that. And that'll give the viewer, take a look at what it looks like from 5-6 feet away, and looking at that one over there, yeah, that looks pretty good. So it's nice and soft. It looks pretty much soft. So I kind of like that, and I'll just leave that for right now. Let's come down here and let's paint up a little bit more of an open rose, and we'll paint one that's just kind of opening up here like that. So I had this other one. Is that back here behind this one? Yeah. And I'll show you just a little bit of, you want to come in here. I want this, let's do it more of a yellow to a white. So I'll slide over this side, over here towards my grayed colors just a little bit more. Let's put some white out here with this. I want to mix these up just a bit more than what I do with a lot of the other paintings you see me do. You keep the colors a little bit more mixed. So if this is going to be our light side and stuff, we'll come in here and we'll kind of shape up a few petals here, sometimes I'll pull out here. This will be the side that I want to collapse, so I'll just be very casual here, pulling these in and out. I can use the corner of this little flat like this and just push in and out and soften that mark, soften that edge of that petal in like that. Real light, kind of like a feathery type of touch, and that's what the fusion does. Let's bring that mark in like this. Let's set up that particular petal there. There we go. So that sets up a nice wild one there. Let's get a little more light, maybe a bit more yellow. I can get a touch of Hansa in that if I want this to be a brighter yellow type of opened, wild rose or something. We'll come in here and we'll make that mark here. We'll make pull that mark out like that. Pull some in and out. Wipe your brush. Wipe the color with your brush like this. Use just a corner here to ease that line. And this is where I like to get that. I'm looking at that movement here, right in there like that. Don't do it too many times, you'll lose it. Okay, I'm using just a real light little feather touch, and these fusion brushes like this is really where they work really well, like this. Now, step back every once in a while and look at it so you don't, work it too. I mean, you got to look at a painting like this. It's got to be pretty rough so that when we step back, this optically works pretty well. Let's get over here and cool this down. Get a little red violet, a little quinacridone violet. Let's get just a little cooler color in here. Push some of that in. I will wipe my brush, and I'll just push that color out just a bit here. Just like that. So I get a nice cooler side to this particular flower there. I like that cool color coming in like that. Here, that works pretty nice. Before I get going too far here, let's take some of this color. Let's go over here to the other side, and let's make a mark here of these petals here, in and out. Here, just push in and out. We'll let this flower sit back behind this rose. Maybe come down this side here, just like that. Let's take just a bit of cool and push that in and out here. A little bit of that cool color, that's pretty. I like that cool color. Let's push a little bit of that in here on this side of the rose as well. And let that just collapse down here. That's pretty nice. And I'll take a little bit of that light yellow from those flowers. I like to do this kind of stuff, incorporate the colors of the flowers into each other. So I incorporated some of this yellow that I use right here, right into that rose. Give it a little different look. I can push, always, of course this is one of dozens of techniques I use in the book, but I can push and use this edge here to, if I want to define that edge just a little bit more. Got to be careful. I don't want those marks to come down too far here, so I'll wipe my brush and just use the corner to the flat here, just soften that mark out just a bit there. But I do like to look and see if, the side here, are these petals coming pretty close to each other there? Do I need to define up the edge of this particular rose here, maybe just a touch here, because it's coming out? So do I need to have just a little bit of more work onto that one there? A lot of times I'll come in here, I'm going to white and go right into my warmer yellow with some more white here. Lighten this up. Let's come in and let's make a lighter, shorter petal here, which happens a lot, of course, in wild roses and open flowers like this. And let's just put a few little marks here, like that's going to be another little movement of a petal. I'll cool down, push a little bit of that cool in and out of that movement there. That's where I like to have that movement. And up close like this looks like, oh my gosh, why? I don't know if I can leave it like that. But you can step back, and that really, really softens out. That's what you have to do. You have to step back. These are optical techniques. So don't judge it like what you're seeing right now in a close-up of a camera on a painting. You have to step back and see how this looks. And so you look up here and you go, wow, that's really thin. But then when you step back and look at it, that camera there, and you go, oh wow, that whole area kind of pushes back and softens out. That's what you're looking for, okay? And so let's come back up here. Let's add just a little more light color to it here. And again, this is just a few of the techniques. This is just a few of them. I just wanted to show you. Those that want to, explore optical techniques, hit the links down below there in the description here of this video, and you'll see some of the books and stuff that I do, books and videos that are coming with this, and you'll see these techniques. Now I'm cooling that off, and I'm going to push into that center there just a little bit for that particular flower. I'm going to put out a mark or two here. This is some of the stuff I like to do suggestive wise of other outside edges of petals, and this is a technique I like, and I'll leave a lot of that. I may put a softer tone in there. Let's go a little green and a little bit of my brown matter here. This will dirty up a tone, maybe a touch of yellow into that. And I'm just going to put a little half-tone stroke next to that to give the feeling of movement out there. But that might be very suggestive of a light hit, like a light strike on the edge of a petal or something like that. And, sometimes I like to do that, step out onto the flower and put some of those looks in like that, because it's quite suggestive. It's a beautiful look to it. And that's, how you go about treating some of these edges and some of these marks, that becomes indicative of your particular look to the flower. So make sure you step way back onto your brush and you push these marks in here. And what I'm doing is I'll touch and lift off like that, so I get this kind of a granulated edge here to that edge of that petal. That's what I like to have. And I'll put a couple coming the other way. Let's use the corner with a little different tone, a little brown matter here. Let's cool that off, a little bit of my red violet. Cool that center back down. Sometimes I don't generally do it with my finger like I do in so many of the other videos that you've watched on the channel. I try to do it mostly with marks and tones, and that gives you a different look. But sometimes you could use that finger in there if you want. So I'll get a little bit of movement there. Let's lighten that movement just a touch. And of course I want to keep this flower very suggestive further to the back here, and maybe I'll push those light marks out here like this to the edges like that. I like some of that real casual look. And then I'll take some dark here and we'll take out just a bit of that here, just a bit of that look to it there. Let's take the corner and a little bit of our cooler color, soften back some of that playful color there. That gives a different look to a flower sitting back there. Let's get a little darker. Let's get a little pine green, a little yellow, a little black here. I love the Hansa and the black. That makes your older colors of your olive greens. That's how artists made olive greens for years, was your black and yellows, of course. And we'll push a little bit of that green into that. We'll push a little bit of that green back in like that. I'm going to wipe that. We'll pick up a little cool color with that, and we'll just put a few marks right around that green. So this gets some of these colors here into the centers of these particular flowers here. And we'll put some marks here. Use the edge of the brush to incorporate those a little bit, but don't blend them too much. Make sure you step back. We want to have some color differences there in these particular flowers here. So some nice color differences. Let's grab a little bit of that red violet and hit that dark cool center there. Some red violet here. That'll allow me to really put some nice warmer tones in there. Maybe I'll take a kind of what we'll call a half tone here and lift out some of that here onto the light side here. Push some of that, these light marks in the centers of the flowers there back a little different. Okay, so that's got those in there. Now I can go in. Before I finish those up, let's take a little pine green and black, maybe a touch of blue. Nice little touch of our phthalo blue here. Cool that just a bit, and let's do a little bit of dark negative painting here, which is another technique I use a lot, and this will increase the contrast here. Let's negative paint right up here, which this is what I use to set off the petal edges sometimes of these flowers. Sometimes I'll collapse the look. I'll wipe my brush here like this, and I'll collapse the edge, collapse those edges there, which is what you want to do in an optical painting. You want to collapse some of these together here don't necessarily blend them to another color, but optically take those edges and soften them out just a bit there. So I get a lot of contrast that's lifting this rose out, but I want to create. I don't want to have a harsh edge, which gives you visual contrast, or what we call an optical edge, a nice defined found edge. I want to stay away from some of that here, but let's just put a little bit here. This will bring out that edge. It gives this nice center of interest. It's lifting the rose slightly. Let's put just a little bit of that right in here, and we can use some of that here. Let's get a little yellow, a little bit of our yellows right into that nice yellow green here, and let's just work this back and forth here for this particular leaf here. Push that leaf up. Maybe add a bit of that into this coloring into this particular leaf, and I'm staying very casual with the edges and stuff of these leaves here. I like to wipe that brush and, like I say, lose that edge or use that edge like that. And sometimes I use my finger, not too often, not as much as I do in a lot of the other painting techniques that I show you, especially in the Paint It Simply techniques. But I want to come in here, I'll put a little optical dark there and set that out. That's kind of nice. Step back, take a look at it. Take a look at what your painting looked like. How's the eye softening that over distance? Let's push some of this out here, like that. Okay. Let's take some of this out. These are beautiful techniques. I love these types. These types of techniques really make you feel like the artist as you're going in there and just moving and lightening up that brush and moving those colors. Let's put maybe a suggestion of a flower that's going to come back here. Just push that color around. Step back and watch the optics of it there. Maybe that's a flower that's going to go back there. Maybe we'll put a light little edge like this little flower turns here. So we'll put a nice light little edge back there. Flowers in the back I usually paint pretty quick here. Let's suggest another little flower coming down here. I like the eye to move through different types of flowers. And let's put just a bit of light and warm into that here. Maybe these are extra little flowers here coming down this way. Petit and Courgeois would get really casual with these guys out here like this. Let's put a little green into there. Maybe there's now that's a little too much of a yellow green. I'll cool that down with just a touch of red violet in that as well. Let's cool that down just a bit. As you're heading to your shadows, that's one of the things I like to say in the book, and there's two, is you control a lot of the temperatures really easy of your colors with that red violet. It's the coolest color onto your palette, and this helps you really control those particular temperatures of it. Now, I'm not done with those leaves or anything by far, but let's go in. Let's just work just a little more here. Let these edges go lost just a touch more here. Here, lose those edges. Maybe give like another little. I like to loosen up the outsides of the painting here like that. Sometimes I do it with stems, but even with the stems, I like to be very casual. I don't like to be too perfect or precise with the stems because those can become very stiff. So got to be a little careful. But we can add some stem movements out here. But I kind of like to break them up with some other little just touches using just a corner of this brush. And you have to move kind of fast, or they become very stiff looking. So I have to move very fast and add these little edges like that. They're really fun. Now I decide here into my painting, I step back, take a look at it, and I decide now how much contrast do I want to add to the painting itself. And it's time for a new paper towel. So how much more do I want to add? Now I know I'm going to get lighter. Of course I can get quite a bit lighter. and optical. How much more optics do I want to get? When I come into here, into this one, you can see I get, there's a certain amount of techniques that we use where we look to the undertone here and we smooth out our undertone ever so slightly here like this with a couple of brush strokes down like this, a couple of real soft looks. And what that does is that smooths that underpainting of it and allows you to come in with some really light optical techniques here. I'm going to come right into my yellow and some of this beautiful peach color here with that quinacridone and some white here and some yellow and some real light color here, real thick white coloring here onto this. And this is where I can come in and really look at the pure optics of it. And I'll say, okay, I'm going to go bang, I'm going to put a nice, and I have a bit of texture on that. Now I have to decide this particular stroke. Do I leave a stroke? Sometimes I'll leave the stroke. Just leave it. Maybe add another little edge of one, like right into there like that, and maybe a softer little bit out like that, drawing out the eye into maybe some other petals. I can soften it. I can put a half tone next to that. I can ease the edge. There's a lot of techniques. I'm going to put a little half tone right in here and just pull down like that. Just ease that edge just a little bit with a slightly darker coming. So here's my light. I come this slightly darker right in there and just ease that edge just a bit like that. And look at just how much that added to that particular rose. I'm going to take that light. I'm going to come right out through here. I'm going to go bang and put that light right out here onto that edge there. And again, what do you want to do? Ease that edge, pull it in. Do you want to, pull in here towards the center? Now, I got to be careful not to drag light too far, so I may want to put a little bit of dark in my brush and lift off just a bit so I keep that light right out here by the edge. And I like texture. I don't like that nice curved edge there, so I like to break it apart sometimes with a couple of other little touches. I picked up some of that green. I'll just pick up a little extra paint here and just take some of that out here. And let's get the optics right up into here. Let's put this light little edge here. Sometimes, this is where I step back and I have to decide, if I'm going to blend these out or leave these little marks. And a lot of times I leave those little marks like that because when you step back a few feet, that looks pretty nice. So you have to kind of look, step back. Let's put a little bit of that light right out through here. Real casual little marks here. That might be a little bit much there, so we'll put just a little cooler color and just ease that edge there. I'll leave some of it sometimes and just a few little marks there. Right here, a few little marks right into the center to kind of, and again, step back and take a look at your rose. We'll take a look at that one there. That looks pretty good. Step back and look at that and see how much of that edge you want to leave that particular flower there. Maybe build that up a bit more here, a bit more to that rose there, some texture to it, pulling down here. Let's build this edge up. Look, I'll pick up some nice thick white, kind of moved over that peach just a little bit here. Let's cool that down, just a bit of cooler in our brush there, and just do a little half tone stroke right there. That's kind of nice, and reach out towards that light there. Maybe one more little light stroke right in here to kind of bring these shapes together. Now that brought those two together a little too much, a little too even. So I'll just take a little shadow tone here and just ease that out here like that. I like that. Sometimes push that light in and out there just a touch. And if I feel like I've lost some of my shadow, I just push some shadow back into my brush like this. Come back and push that into the rose itself and work that in just a bit. Maybe down here just a bit. Let that tone just kind of soften out to there. Now you've got a real optical, real optical. Now this is a little dark into that center for me, a little too much contrast. If I step back from that, it looks kind of like a hole into the rose. When I look at that monitor over there from that camera and I step back, it looks kind of like a little hole here. So I'm going to take a little bit of tone here and just push that in just to get rid of just a touch more of that dark and take a look at that optically, and that looks pretty good. Now you can come in you can build more little petal strokes or something like that into there. I paint for, of course, lots of different ways, but I paint a lot for movement and stuff. So I want that center there just to kind of move around like that. That works pretty nice into there. And now that rose has a lot of optics to it. There's hundreds of different ways to paint these things, like I say. But, I'm going to take a little bit of that dark right there and just add just a touch of that into that rose right down there. So I usually like to do that, take that center and just add a little bit of it. And that optically, boy, when you step back from that, it looks great. Now, for the centers of this, I'll just take a little Hansa yellow here. Let's take a little yellow oxide, some white. Let's just kind of model those together. Modeling is not mixing, so I don't want to mix those up too much. I'll use the corner of the brush. I'll start up here onto the light side of that, and I'll just tap some of that down in there. Now, that's too much right now, but I know it. And I'll fix it here in just a minute. I'm going to go ahead and do this one here. And this is where I would stand up, step back, and take a look and say, okay, now I've got to soften that one. I'll put a little dark, a little red, a little green, just a little bit of that softer color into my brush here, and just kind of lift off and tap through until I start to see that center here start to develop the way I want it to. And again, I like it to be, pretty optic. Here on this one, it's just a soft little suggestion of a center here. A little, I can just add and take off here as I want, to look through to get some of that little bit of center there, action going in there. I like that. Overall, that one came out pretty nice. Let's put a little red, little brown matter right into that. Here, stop that. Sometimes I'll take like a red and my red violet here. Love that red violet, which is some of the deep color that I had there, and reverse out down in through here and pull out some of that as a deep, cool shadow out like that, and that tone, and that looks pretty nice that way as well there. And let's get back into some of our olive greens, some Hansa yellow, touch of black. I like a bit of my brown matter into that too. That's beautiful colors into those greens. You get some nice warm olive and kind of a orangey tone to some of those greens. They're really beautiful tones here. And let's add a bit of that here to some of this warm side up here. Change the tone up too. Add a little bit of that pine green. Get more of a yellow green, brighter yellow green here. Maybe a touch of white up here. Let's just look at that lighter green. That's a pretty lighter green here. Let's put a bit of that over here onto this side. So I like to hit these leaves with some different greens now. Here. Let's hit the edge here with this. And let's not go quite that. I widened that out a bit. And see, I love to do that and push that back and forth with that thick color there. Destroy those edges. That's the optics of it. I like that lost edge. It's different, I mean, you're an artist, and as an artist, you look at all the great masters throughout all the centuries that I spent, 30 years studying them and their techniques, and they always change. All the real great painters changed, and tried new things and tried new colors, and it keeps their art ever progressing, doesn't become stagnant, and that's what I like. And so I always, I love to paint all the different techniques and stuff, and so it's because they give different feels to your painting, different feelings to it, and some techniques I really, really enjoy. Some I just, they're okay, but I paint them all. I like to paint all of them. So here I'm just working some colors out. And, you can make the leaves as suggestive or, as refined as you want. I tend to leave them in the optic techniques pretty suggestive here. I'm going to work some darker greens, a little pine green, a little black, maybe a bit of brown matter. Keep that nice toned here, that nice toned color. You can come back and restate some of these little bits of dark, little edges, little bits of that here. let's just pull that out just a bit. Sometimes I use my finger rather than going and addressing a new color here. And work some of those out here. Let's go restate some of that stem action here that got a little bit lost here. Set that back. You can put, since you have the rose, you know, with the rose, I like to put a little corner of burnt sienna on the brush and add like little thorns and stuff like that to it. Those little touches just add extra little color, extra little bits into the painting. I love little touches of burnt sienna. Burnt sienna works so well into your paintings, especially, you know, warm paintings. I like to have little touches of it. Now that's too much there, so I just put a little light color of my background stuff into that and just push through it just a bit. But I want to leave a little bit of that optic there through. But let's just push some of that out here like that. Just makes pretty flowers. You know, and I'll look through. Do I want to restate that edge out here a bit? Leave that a little more optic there. And of course step back. And that's what I'll do at the end of this painting. I'll sit back, step back, and maybe look and refine any of these edges that I want. Sometimes I'll leave little strokes like that, you know, to pop that flower out. If I feel like it's too much, I'll put a darker tone in there and push back to it. Or I'll blur through the edge like that. Just take that edge out just a bit here. A lot of different ways. But this is the type of, this is just some of the techniques. This isn't by any matter of means all the techniques I use. But this is a negative painting here. Coming back in there. Setting that one in. Reshaping and lifting that particular flower there. I'll use a little bit more negative here. Just little touches of contrast that lifts that particular part of the flower out there. I can add a cooler, slightly darker bit right in here if I want to bring this flower, this particular flower or rose, the edge of a rose there, back up a little bit more, a little bit farther forward into my particular painting. You know, look to the amount of contrast you have here. Do you want to collapse this edge a bit more? Like I say, in some of the other paintings that I did in the book, I really collapsed down this bottom edge and let that really, you know, go down here like that. And that's up to you how much you do. Here I'll put a little extra texture of that dark. Let's push that in here. Look for that. Sometimes if I decide to increase the power of the leaves, I'll put let's get a little more Hansa and white right into some of this pine green. That gives you a nice light warm green here. And I'll look to that for like a little edge here out like that. If I really want to pop that edge out just a bit more. And again, texture is another thing that you can use. And we'll just, you know, put out some of that texturing and stuff. And again, if I make a mark and it's a little too much, I then just drop the tone down just a bit and I'll take some of that out or look to ease that edge of that particular tone. But I do like, especially towards the end of the painting, to come in and get a little textures into it, build up some of those textures, build up some of that mark and that movement, and you know, and all right, it's all good. It's all fun. Let's collapse the edge of that just a bit there of that rose. Maybe look to that rose right here and put just a line right here, building the edge of that petal coming out like this. And then I'll take a little halftone and soften that edge here down like that. Here. There we go. Now that might be a little too straight. Sometimes, you know, you don't know. You got to try. A little too straight, so let's just ease that out just a bit here. There, like that. Little quick little touches. But see, I like that. And this is one of the things you do in optics is you just kind of jump over. You might put a little mark or a little edge into that rose right there like that. And then come back and just ease that edge just a bit here. And you leave those things and you sit back and you look at it and say, okay, you know, is that mark, does that look like it's the edge of a transparent petal right there? And you know, where's that going to, how's that going to look? And you know, do you want to come in here and add You know, so I've collapsed this edge. Maybe I want to bring these up just a bit, like there's an extra little row of petals there. Right in there like that. Lots of different ways, but I'm painting now opaque and texture. Quick little marks. I'll drag out. You know, you could soften underneath here and just drag out a little bit. That's another little technique, but we drag out a few little marks like that. And these little marks that you put out there like that, when they get back, they optically bend and they look really, really fantastic. So that's just a quick, what's an hour, but it's a quick little, almost just about an hour. It's a quick little painting for you to show you. And I love painting with the long handle brushes. I love to use the paint really thick. You can use it just like a regular acrylic, like I put out that quinacridone. You can see I squirted it right out of the tube. If you're going to paint for like an hour or so, you can just paint like that. But I move, and I use thicker paint. And I'm looking at the marks that we're making. And in the undertones, you tend to soften them down just a little bit, and then you leave those marks right up on top with that lighter color unblended, and you step back and you take a look at it from 5-6 feet and see how they optically blend. There's a little bit different. All right. There's a lot of these types of techniques, a lot of things that I do, and I have some videos on it. And I just released a book, Garden of Flowers, Volume 3. And it's an optical technique painting, and there's 8 particular paintings in that particular book. There's an associated video that goes with it that has a couple more lessons into it, but 8 different lessons showing some of the different step-by-step techniques, and there's 40 to 60 step photos in each of those 8 lessons. It's over 100 pages, all full color, and I talk about colors, color mixing. So if these are something that you want to explore as an artist, you know, to add this to some of your repertoire techniques, some of these optical techniques, which are a lot of fun, then please check out that book, and you can check it out right down at the links down below. Okay, it's brand new. It's coming. It's actually coming in August, so it's we're going to press on it right there, and everything's all painted. Matter of fact, you can see all the step photos of painting that one and all of these, and plus more. But and this one's really pretty. I love how the colors are just so different here. And painting in a lot of grays and warms and cools, and you know, where do you come in and put some of these different marks in, and you know, you look at it, that camera there, it looks absolutely fantastic. You get up close and you go, wow. But you know, how do you paint some of these open rows, almost like a peony type flower and stuff? They're a lot of fun, and there's a lot of step-by-step for it. All right. Thanks very much for joining me. Hope you enjoyed this quick little, just an introduction to some optical type techniques. Get some long handle brushes, step back, get those nice soft colors, and have a lot of fun. And like I always, you know, check out some of our other videos. Go over to our website. You'll see that. We have an online, those of you that are interested in painting flowers, now a lot of you write me with all kinds of flower questions. We have a big course that's starting up on our JanssenArtOnline.com. It's starting up here into the fall, and it's going to go through all different types of flowers, all different types of flower techniques. So it's an online learning. We do a combination of live classes and other full-length classes, and you have unlimited access to the classroom. When you sign up for those classes, you have unlimited access to the classrooms, and we allow you to download those videos and all that kind of stuff. So as far as learning and education, the online classes are some of our best quality education as far as what you get for your dollar's worth. Go check us out on JanssenArtOnline.com. You'll see some of the classes we're coming, and we're coming into the fall with an entire floral class. It's going to last about 6 months. It's a big, long class, and you'll get to paint a lot of different types of paintings, a lot of different type of techniques, especially you that like the roses and stuff. That's the one we're going to go into. That's the one you need to take. Okay? Thanks very much for joining me, and I'll look forward to seeing you on some of our other videos here in our landscape videos. All right? And don't forget to drop a comment down there, okay? Because we like to hear some of your comments and stuff. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.